Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Crime Unveiled with Courtney Bennett on this Tuesday night. I have a very special guest joining us for this live show, both on Facebook and YouTube. Councilwoman for the 6th Ward of Flint, Tonya Burns, is joining me right now. Tonya, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about the current crime and violence that we're seeing in the city of Flint. You talk to people all the time, not just in your ward, but across the city. We're constantly hearing from people. They're frustrated with what they're seeing. Is that also what, the calls, the text messages that you're getting?
Yeah, yes, there is. I do want to say, I do understand our police department is stretched, but one of the things that the people are definitely concerned about is how crime issues are handled, calls that come in, the gunshots that are constantly ringing out in all neighborhoods, the cases when a detective is to be assigned them, how quick are they assigned, and if they are assigned a case. So we've got some serious issues.
Recently, it seems like we've had this increase in violence here in the city of Flint because we're constantly hearing about it. We had that horrible situation on 810 Day in downtown Flint. A young woman, she lost her life just this past week, Friday. A young girl was shot. I mean, what can be done to address this, to stop the crime, stop the violence?
So it has to be some open dialogue, and it has to be a willingness to first admit we have to make some changes. I've been asking since 2020 for a comprehensive public safety plan that deals with all issues. Our gang, we need a specialized gang task force that's dealing directly with the home to school issue and the components that we know that we have problems with, at making sure that we're paying attention to the different issues that these young people and other people are dealing with. So violence interrupters are some of the things that we need. Those are things which should be in a comprehensive public safety plan. Now, how are we addressing it? The young lady who was shot on Barbara Drive on Susan Street, there had been a shooting that was on Tuesday and that prior Saturday. I had, to break the silence is the hardest thing to do. I had people reach out to me from the 1st Ward to say, hey, it's time to break the silence. And there's a trust issue. And so they trusted me. I made sure I did my part with contacting Chief Green via email, phone call, and text message. And then also 2 other individual sergeants that are on the police department. That was on Thursday. On Friday afternoon, the young lady was shot in the back, 14 years old, critically.
And it's just every single time that we hear of these shootings, they're horrible. They're like, no one should be sitting in their home or whatever the situation is and just, be shot. And we've talked about these drive-by shootings countless times. We've stood in front of people's homes who barely missed the bullets that went through.
And everyone doesn't miss the bullets. We can state even last year, Canterbury and Clio Road, Trinity, the young lady who the bullet, she was laying sleeping in her home and the bullet fatally took her life. We can talk about a little girl, I think she was 3, on Cherry Line. We need to make sure that gun safety is an issue also. We can look at there was issues with, I believe, a 4 and a 9-year-old. They were shot sleeping in their beds. We can talk about Messiah, who was 3, who was at home and he was shot. So it's not just, small, it's Pulaski Street. A 10-month-old was killed with his grandmother. So we have a gun violence problem. And so we have to have the very real conversations. That was one of the reasons why I presented to the Flint City Council to have a hearing, that we need to have an investigative hearing to come up with solutions, see what's working, what's not. We need to make sure that when we have a plan, that we're looking at it actually annually, yearly, and then we need, if we see that trends are changing, then we need to immediately convene and have a meeting to work with the chief to say, this isn't working. We need to make sure what's keeping our residents safe, and they don't feel safe.
You mentioned about gang task force. We've talked about this before. Other cities have them and they're in place. Have you looked at those other cities and do they work?
They work very well. in cities that you have them: Denver, Baltimore, Maryland. Oregon has a program called Cahoots. Baltimore, Maryland has a comprehensive public safety plan. And so when we look at these, and they work, and Detroit has one. And so when we look at how they work, how are they when we don't have? We don't have enough that's in place. We know we have a problem with the young people. We know that we have issues, whether we like it or not, whether we need to make parents responsible for their children. Also, a lot of these are youth and young people who are out unattended. It's not okay for your child to be out terrorizing the neighborhood and with assault rifles and weapons. That's not what you do. We know that they call it scamming and different things that these young people are doing. We have got serious issues. We look at the type of violent crimes. The Banbury Place street, where they had two young men who were shot. The person was up to the window and shot. The two fatally taken both of their lives. Some of these issues are because of gang violence. We had, I think, 2 or 3 associated crimes or homicides with just that. When there was one day before, and then within the week, one shooting, which means we're going to get another. There's going to be retaliation generally.
Do you think that Flint is doing a good job with getting these, guns off the streets? We've seen gun buyback programs, things like that, or does more need to be done?
Well, gun buyback programs are generally your grandfather's Saturday night special or shotgun. Those are not the guns that they're selling back. They're just not taking these high-powered assault rifles and selling them. Reason why: you may get $200 from a gun buyback, or some maybe $50 or $500, when those guns are selling for $2,500 at a much higher rate. Also, we have to look at what we call ghost guns and straw guns that come from out of our country, which come over here and they assemble them here. Also, guns which are stolen. So, we have to look at how are they getting the guns? Why are there so many guns in our neighborhoods? So one of the things I spoke with some of the police, not just with Flint, but other areas, to say that, hey, we know where the people are hanging out, or what we call, they're going to be doing hotspot policing. One of the things is, go down there. If they're loitering, hanging out, like the Saturday, August 2nd, when we had 17 people shot on Industrial in that area. 17 people were shot Saturday. That doesn't include the 2 on that Friday or the 3 on that Sunday. We had a gun violence, a violent weekend with 22 people shot between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and some were fatal. So we know they're hanging out in a certain area. Create a perimeter, do something to offset that. Seriously, get the guns. Right now it's attrition. Hey, they're shooting at this person, they're shooting at this person. No, some of those bullets are not for their intended target. For example, 810 Day. We had 2 people shot. An 18-year-old young lady was fatally shot. We had a 16-year-old who survived. But the amount of stories that I'm able to recall without even looking at them is sad. It's sad, because these kids nowadays, when you talk to them, a lot of them say, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die. Well, I don't want you to, I want you to live. I want you to want to live for something. And when you have these conversations, it is a culture in our city that we have got to break.
You're a lifelong Flint resident. Have you seen anything like this before when it comes to the violence? I mean, I remember 2021, there was a big issue in the city of Flint.
So we do know that during COVID, they became pop-up party specialists, to where pop-up parties were everywhere because you couldn't be inside and people wanted to get out. And so we should have had a plan at that time to deal with it, because we had Coochie Land, which that was on Clio Road, but we had the shooting, and we had many of them. Clio Road would be shut down from approximately 12 a.m. to 6 o'clock the next morning, where you couldn't even get through. And so developing a plan will and should decrease, but we have to also work with our other agencies. We cannot stop this problem just by ourselves. We don't have the manpower. We need other agencies, because we've got to get a grip on it. I mean, this uptick now is really scary, where people are scared. When I'm hearing 96-year-old people saying, I hit the floor, I've had people, I can't tell you how many gunshot videos that the Ring doorbells are catching and catching bullets flying by. And when people are saying, I'm leaving, I have had people leave and say, I'm leaving your ward or Flint because the police aren't doing what we need them to do. I've had residents who a retired principal, someone pulled next to her and her husband. He taught at the college, University of Michigan, pulled a gun on him, went to pass him. They knew where he lived. And they were upset like nothing was done. He pulled the gun on me and pointed it at us. And so the violence that we're seeing and nothing's done, it encourages, in my opinion, the people who are committing the gun violence problems to continue to do it. There's nothing getting done to a lot of these criminals, so they keep doing it.
When it comes to people not coming forward, because we hear that all the time of there's not enough people coming forward with information, but also at the same time, these people are scared. They're worried for their lives to come forward.
They are. So that was one of the reasons why I, at that time, worked with Police Chief Green on making sure the witness protection program. So people who needed to come forward, asking him, well, what are the issues? Because ARPA dollars would be okay to, could be approved to use for this, to decrease the violence in our neighborhood. So one of the things he says, some people may need to move out of town. They may need the use of relocating, but then to come back and forth. So we did approve in City Council for a witness protection program. I don't know where that's at because we can't seem to get answers. So when we talk about what are some of the plans, we're not hitting the target, and we need to be at the table in an open forum to listen to the public, because the public, they're scared. Literally, they're stating, I'm not going to talk because, they shoot up your house. They don't just shoot up the front of the house. Yeah. They're going around to the back. I had someone tell me last Thursday that the person shot up the back of the house. They're sitting there watching you and shot the back of the house. So the level of crime and gun violence is escalated. And a lot of these, and it's the young people, a lot of the young people. And then there's domestic violence issues. So there's a lot that we need to work on. And we have to figure out together, how do we stop the gun violence?
Do you worry that if work isn't done right now, that this is only going to get worse?
Absolutely, because we can look at when our crime was really high during COVID, and then it was able to curb off. And then we said, then state of Michigan State Police was pulling out to what degree, and our numbers have went up. We do know that having them patrol our streets as frequent as they were getting a lot of guns and drugs off the street. And the one thing with the program that they had at that time was they were really only looking for violent criminals. If you had a gun, if you had drugs in the car, they had a program to where they were giving grants. If you had a busted tail light or your license, they were giving grants to help people, or car seats for children. To where the Michigan State Police was buying car seats because they want to make sure you get to work. But what their main purpose was getting the guns off the streets. What we do know, we talk about the gun buyback programs. Those guns, the young people, they like them. And the new little words, the bleakies, the switches, the illegal attachments to where they can do 100 rounds of bullets. It's dangerous. And it sounds like a war zone in a third world country. People have said, well, it sounds like it's over in Ukraine or Baghdad or the Gulf War, for people who have served our country in the war, to say, it triggers them because some of them live in these neighborhoods where gunshots are continuously just going off.
Tonya, what can be done?
Well, one of the things we need to look at is, what is it we need to really target? There's multiple areas, I feel. One, with our youth. We need to, number one, with our youth, figure out how do we get the guns out of their hands, get them into programming, get them mentors, get the mentorship programs, making sure there's a school and a home component, holding the parents responsible. Grand Blanc has if children are fighting in schools, they're charging the parents $500. I have requested through our legal department to have something set up like this, because we can't just keep letting parents let their children out and them not being held responsible. As a parent with my children, yes, they are grown, but I knew where my children were at. And what we have to discuss is it takes a village. If you're a parent, you need to be a parent first, then be that child's friend. Be the parent first.
How has this city changed in crime stats and everything like that since when you were growing up and when your kids were growing up?
So I never saw a drive-by. I never saw a drive-by in my life. People were able to, then when we had the high schools, we had Central, Northwestern, Southwestern, Northern, Flint Academy, and Powers. And on the weekends, you drove up and down the street in the cars, and your parents, mostly everyone's parents worked for General Motors, and you listened to the music, you went to school dances, and you did those type of things. People weren't shooting people. We know that bringing drugs into our neighborhoods with the crack epidemic began to change things. But even then, it was generally the drug dealers shooting the drug dealers. This generation, completely different. Flint has got some great things about it. When people say, well, Flint doesn't have anything to do, we have a beautiful cultural center. People can go to tap dance, ballet. There's many programs for basketball. Chief Green, Terrence Green has the PAL program, which is one of the things he needs to be enhancing his PAL program. When it was shared, one of the things I learned, I had like over 400 shares for cooking classes. You know, home economics is not taught in school anymore. I'm like, I didn't know cooking was so popular. So how do we enhance the things? Music classes. We have the Flint Institute of Music. You know, we need to find other ways to get these kids, to get them involved other than letting the streets teach them. If you reach one, teach one. And we have got to make sure we're reaching our children.
Tonya, as we wrap things up here, is there anything else that you want to add that we didn't talk about?
I want parents to feel, even for myself, reach out. And often parents don't feel that they can, tell anyone. If you have a child that you want to reach out, I will give you complete anonymity. I want to stop the shooting. I've done this several times. It's something that I generally have done for years behind the scene, even going to get families and taking them to a safe house. Because literally I have seen plans where they had mapped them out on Google Map, did dry runs on how long it would take them to go in to shoot up the house. I've seen these, and the amount of preparation for me is, what if you put that amount of preparation into school? What if you put that amount of preparation into something passionate and good that you love? We have to get to these kids before the streets get to them. Once the streets get to them, the streets does not let them go. So we need mothers and we need fathers. When they say, well, where is their mother? No, everyone is born of a mother and a father. We need parents. We need the aunts, the uncles. We need our clergy. Flint has almost 400 churches. We need the clergy, the pastors, the reverends, the deacons, the trustees. We need them all.
Tonya, I just want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate the insight and obviously all the information that you provided tonight.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.